But before I get going, I've had at least 3 people already mention Maryland to me. And so I thought I'd give you the official leading age position and information on what has occurred in the state of Maryland. To set the stage, you have to understand that Leading Age has affiliates in, I think, 38 states. And there are state affiliates that represent our members on a state-by-state basis. There's a few states where we don't have affiliates: Hawaii, Wyoming, Alaska, because we just don't have enough members to justify an association. And there are a few areas where we can combine states, like the Northeast, far Northeast, Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont. Maine and New Hampshire are combined. Same thing in the Gulf Coast. New Orleans and Alabama are combined associations. So, but most of the rest of the states have their own state affiliate. Most of those states have now transitioned to the Leading Age brand, and you'll see that most of the states are now Leading Age Connecticut, Leading Age New York, Leading Age Virginia, Leading Age North Carolina. The reason, part of that was we have an affiliation agreement with each one of those of our state affiliates that sets out the specifics of the relationship between Leading Age as a national association and each state affiliate. And those come up for renewal every 10 years. Well, they started to come up for renewal, and they're not all at the same time, but they tend to be fairly close together. They started to come up for renewal about 3 or 4 years ago, and at the time that we were starting the process to change our name. So in conjunction with changing the name, we developed, in conjunction with the states, there was a task force of many of the state executives, a new affiliation agreement that spells out the relationship between Leading Age on a national basis and each state affiliate. The financial structure, the interaction, the responsibilities, what we do for them, what we expect them to do for us, the whole 9 yards. And that was agreed to and presented to the states. Many states had questions, requested some changes, so it was a process that evolved over many months. But in the final analysis, all the states that are affiliates signed the affiliation agreement. One of the benchmarks of the affiliation agreement is that the entity that runs the state, our state affiliate, has to be a not-for-profit organization, and has to be controlled by the not-for-profit members in that state. And that's one of the benchmarks, and one of our most critical components is the recognition that we represent not-for-profits. That's who we are. That's who Leading Age is. And so all the affiliates have to have, as their controlling entity, the not-for-profit corporation that controls the state has to be a not-for-profit and has to be controlled by the not-for-profit members in that state. In the state of Maryland, that was historically MANFA, the Maryland Association of Not-for-Profit Homes for the Aging. And that affiliation that we had with MANFA went back many, many, many years. Well, they were going through the same process of reviewing this affiliation agreement that all the other states were. When we started to have discussions with MANFA, some things became clear. As many of you know, MANFA has an operating side that's called Lifespan. They also have an educational component called Beacon Learning. When we looked at the 990s for MANFA, and we looked at the 990s for Lifespan, we couldn't tell who was the controlling entity. And in the MANFA side, the not-for-profit homes were supposed to be the controlling entity. That's who our affiliation agreement would be with, not with Lifespan. When we talked to Lifespan, they said, well, we're the ones that really run everything. And Lifespan has a significant number of for-profit members as part of their governing body. And we came back to them and said, first of all, we do not have a problem with our individual states having relationships and having members that are for-profit communities. There are a number of states that do exactly that. Our position is, however, that the control of that state affiliate has to be in the hands of not-for-profits. So you can have for-profits. Colorado, for example, Virginia, there's a number of states who have for-profit members that provide healthcare services, but they don't have control or a significant voice in the ultimate running and the ultimate guidance and governance of that individual state. In Maryland's case, that was unclear as to who had control of that association. And what we said to Lifespan was, we're happy to continue the affiliation. However, you have to make sure that and prove to us that MANFA is in fact the controlling entity, and it is controlled by not-for-profits. Well, that dialogue all started last fall, late summer and into the fall. And MANFA said, and Lifespan said, okay, we understand that, let's look at this and we'll see what we can work out. You know, all the affiliation agreements were supposed to be done at the end of last year. Maryland's was not, and they said, can we have some more time? And then we discovered basically that their original affiliation agreements didn't run out till the beginning of March of this year. So we said, okay, fine, you've got another 3 months. You know, we're not necessarily going to pull any triggers or do anything precipitous because we have this kind of time. And so they kept saying, okay, we're going to restructure, we'll figure something out. And we kept saying, coming back to them, okay, fine, we'll work with you, let us know what you're going to do. And this basically, and that's making a long story short, and I was not active and involved with this, so I don't know all the details, and I can't tell you who called who and who said what to who. I can tell you that I was in a couple of meetings, and for example, when our legal counsel, outside legal counsel, looked at the MANFA Lifespan relationship, their legal conclusion was they couldn't tell who controlled what because it was just too intermixed, it was too unclear. And that was something we said we couldn't have because we have to have the not-for-profit control. Well, the long and the short of it is Lifespan / MANFA continued to ask for more time to try and figure out, and then a week ago they finally sent us a letter that said MANFA and Lifespan have become so intertwined, we can't separate those out, and we have decided that there's too much time and effort involved in developing Lifespan, so we're going to continue as Lifespan, and that's going to be the controlling entity. Well, when they sent us that letter a week ago, as far as we concerned, that basically said, okay, fine, you can't be our affiliate because you don't meet our criteria of having a not-for-profit entity controlled by not-for-profit members. And so the word went out a week ago that we now are fully ceasing any affiliation with or involvement with MANFA or Lifespan. And there is a move right now of a number of what used to be our former members who are still members of Leading Age nationally. They still pay their national dues. Are forming a Leading Age Maryland. So there is going to be a Leading Age Maryland association formed from a number of our members that is in the formation stages right now of getting articles and qualifying as a 501c3. And that's who our affiliation agreement will ultimately sign with, is this new Leading Age Maryland. We basically told Lifespan, fine, you know, we wish you well, you know, there's no hard feelings, but you don't meet our criteria. So that's the history of what's happened in Maryland. It's not us not wanting to have involvement with for-profit entities. As I said, that wasn't the issue. It was simply an issue of which entity we affiliate with on a legal basis and how that entity is controlled and how its governance is structured to make sure that the not-for-profit difference, which is one of our brands, was maintained. Lifespan wouldn't accept that provision, and with that we had to part ways. So that's the story of what's happened in Maryland. It's unique to Maryland. Every other state signed the affiliation agreement, and every other state is going to be our affiliate for at least the next 10 years, and almost every other state, with a few exceptions, have already adopted Leading Age as their name, and those other states will be doing it over the next few years. So that's the history of Maryland. It's unfortunate. We tried very hard not to have this happen, but it just came to a point where they basically told us they weren't going to give up the Lifespan's control, and that basically forced our hand. Yeah.
Is Van Hall the leading age affiliate in Virginia?
Yes. Yeah. They're one of the stragglers on changing their name, I
Would
think.
you repeat the question, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. She asked whether VanHa, the Virginia Association of Not-for-Profit Homes, is our affiliate, and yes, they are. And I'm not sure where they're at in the process of changing the name to Leading Age Virginia.
Steve, could you elaborate a little bit on what the meaning is of the not-for-profit difference? What is that difference?
The not-for-profit difference is what we consider part of our brand, in essence, is that when we talk to people, when we publish things, when we lobby, when we do everything else, we are doing it primarily for not-for-profit entities. And we think that makes a difference in the kind of services we provide, the kind of care we provide. We're mission-driven organizations. Many of them are religious-based, many others are fraternal-based, but they're all mission-driven organizations that are in existence under not-for-profit corporate statutes to provide care and services to seniors, and their goal is to do that in a mission-driven manner, and it's not to be a organization that is looking at how to make profits to pay out to owners and shareholders. And so that difference is a key component of who we are and what we are, and we were not willing to have that watered down or have that undermined by having a controlling entity being a for-profit in any one of our state affiliates. Yeah, Bill.
Steve, could you elaborate on the second Maryland entity? You mentioned before there was a Leading Age Maryland, there were two entities in Maryland, Lifespan and one other, which escapes me.
MANFA.
What's that?
MANFA, Maryland Association of Not-for-Profit Homes for the Aging. That's the original member that was our affiliate. MANFA formed Lifespan as an operating entity, and what ended up, and again, this is, I don't know all the nuances, so I'll summarize it as best I can. MANFA ended up basically becoming a shell entity that had a board of directors pretty much in name only. Everything that that association was doing was done under the corporate structure of Lifespan.
But, you say it's only a shell organization, so there really are not three organizations now. It's only two.
Well, basically there's two. MANFA will go away, and it hasn't really been active. It's been Lifespan in any event.
Does that mean, what does that mean to boards of these affiliates and consequently NACRA's boards? Can we have members on the board that are from for-profit communities, or as long as they aren't the majority of the board?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What happened in Maryland and how we're structured has no bearing at all on NACRA. You can have anybody you want as a member of NACRA on a state. Each state would make that decision, similar to what happened in Maryland, and you as a national organization would make that distinction. Your title, National Continuing Care Residents Association, doesn't specify that you have that these all have to be not-for-profit CCRCs, and we know that 18 or 19% of all CCRCs are for-profit entities. So how you structure your boards on a state level and on a national level is independent from, it has no relationship to how Leading Age structures it. There is no national organization that represents for-profit CCRCs. Some of those for-profit CCRCs are members of American Senior Housing, which is a association in Washington that we do a lot of work with. But those American Senior Housing Association is primarily an education and lobbying group, and they represent lots of for-profit, independent and assisted living housing. Some of the big guys. I mean, the large corporate entities that have hundreds of locations. A few of the CCRCs are members of the American Healthcare Association, which is the for-profit nursing home association, and I would guess a few of them are also members of the Federation of Assisted Living Communities, which is also a national organization, but is primarily assisted living only, the Emerituses and the Sunrises and those kind of entities. So those 20% may have a few affiliations with national organizations, but there's no one organization. But from your perspective, from a resident association perspective, you can make whatever decision you want to have, and I don't see any reason why you can't have residents from a for-profit and residents from a not-for-profit being involved with your associations. There's no good reason not to, because from your perspective, the issues that you're going to be concerned about really doesn't have as much difference whether it's a for-profit run organization or a not-for-profit run organization.
It's just the resident rights.
It's the residents' issues, yes, correct. Any other questions? I hope that clears that up, you know, gives you a, okay, Bill, I knew Bill would have another one.
This broadens the discussion a bit, but the question is, what is the future for not-for-profit CCRCs? At the present time, the principal advantage financially for a not-for-profit CCRC is that the refundable entrance fee refund does not have to be paid until a successor entrance fee is received. And that's what keeps many of these places alive now, as you well know. This contrasts with for-profit. The IRS is insisting that the entrance fee, refundable entrance fee, be treated as ordinary income subject to corporate income tax unless there's a date certain when it has to be refunded. Therefore, they cannot use the not-for-profit formula. And there is a CCRC in Maryland which is essentially bankrupt just because of this. It's for-profit, except that an affiliate is bailing them out now. Looking into the future, the Financial Accounting Standards Board decision on deleting it from its rules, this formula for the refund being paid only after a successor's fee is received, leaves that in sort of a limbo. Is there not some real possibility that the not-for-profit formula for CCRCs throughout the country is now in jeopardy?
I don't agree with that. And without going into a long, detailed dissertation, some of which I'm not, since I'm not a financial person, an accounting person, I don't want to get off into an area and cause myself trouble. But let me tell you a couple things. First of all, we don't see anything on the horizon that suggests that the basic structure of CCRCs is under any jeopardy because of financial or accounting rules yet. I was just at the meeting I was at this week in Austin, Texas, was a conference that we co-sponsor with Ziegler that's for the CFOs, and there's 160 or 70 CFOs from across the country. So I spent the last 3 days talking to CFOs. So
Not-for-profit CFOs.
Not-for-profit CFOs, yeah. And Ziegler does tax-exempt bond financing, so their clients are all not-for-profits. And there was nothing in any of those discussions that would give me any reason to have any concern for the financial structure for CCRCs in the future. On a bigger picture thing, a couple things. First of all, you have to remember that most of our CCRCs, 80% of the CCRCs, are affiliated with some religious fraternal, or in a few cases community-sponsored not-for-profit, and they are there as a mission to serve seniors. CCRCs being one of the first iterations, we'll talk about later, of different ways to also serve seniors, but the core reason they're in business will continue to maintain. There's going to be some changes, and we're seeing lots of internal changes about the ongoing debate, is a type A CCRC, the type A contract, a dying dinosaur. I'd argue not. I think you're going to see different iterations, but I think that there's still a valuable component. We still have 40 or 50% of the contracts in CCRCs are type A contracts, so they're not dying out. There's more diversity than there has been in the past, but they're not dying out. Second of all, if you're going to look at a campus setting, then the only entities at the current time that are interested in playing in this game are not-for-profits, because this sector, the CCRC sector, does not do well in a for-profit model because it's such a large undertaking. As you know, if you want to develop a new CCRC, and we're not developing very many, but there are some, and there's going to be more in the future, you're looking at anywhere from $50 to $200 million. And it's a long, drawn-out, intensive process, and it's not the kind of process that the for-profit sector has traditionally been involved with, because they're still a real estate-based sector, and what their model typically is to build and sell. They don't hold on to things for 10 and 15 or 20 years. They will churn their inventory looking for appreciation and return on investment, and then you can look at it historically. Assisted living, skilled nursing, the other components are all entities where you see a regular turnover of ownership and restructuring to take capital out, to get a return on investment, to continue to do that. That's the only way they can do it, because it's still primarily a real estate-based model. That is not very easily done in a CCRC when you have a value that's in the many tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. You don't churn those kind of communities very easily. So those are much more difficult to do. The other component to it is that is the unknown. One of the unknowns is, what's the value of the CCRC in the whole healthcare sector? There's two things that I can tell you that I personally say to this. One is that if when I'm a senior, and I'm just about there, I turned 60 this September, so I'm knocking at the door. One of the things that I think I would seriously look at, is a Type A contract, because, and some of our members are realizing this, when you're looking at where the healthcare system is going, and you're looking at all the insecurity, there is a strong marketing pitch, for lack of a better word, that you can use for a CCRC that offers a Type A kind of contract to give you some security and assurance that you have a community there that will be able to provide care. Now, there's no guarantees. We were talking earlier. This is a combination of a real estate, finance, and healthcare model is what a CCRC is, and all three of those components have some inherent risks that you're never going to be able to get rid of. But we think that there are lots of checks and balances, and we have a pretty good track record that those risks can be managed and minimized, and so that would be something that is important. The other aspect to it that has been an unknown up until this point in time, or at least for the next couple of years, is what's the value to seniors? Why move into a CCRC? Well, we know anecdotally, and you all know far better than I am, that there's a huge lifestyle component. There's a healthy living component, there's a wellness component, there's living better, longer component, but it's all anecdotal. We always joke, and I'm sure you've heard it a number of times, who's the best representative of CCRC are the CCRC residents, because they're the ones that almost uniformly will say, this is really a great place to live, we really enjoy it. We often hear, we should have done it 2 or 3 or 4 years earlier, those kinds of things. But we finally may have some data behind that, because ABHOW, which used to be American Baptist Homes of the West, received a grant earlier this year to do a 2 or 3 year study to compare the health and wellness of a set of seniors living in the community versus a group of seniors in a CCRC, and to see and to try and come up with scientifically based, empirically based data to demonstrate what the benefits are of a CCRC. And we're really excited about that, because we think that that's going to show some significant advantages. So again, that's another thing that I think will help solidify the fact that CCRCs are a significant player and will continue to be so, and we're going to talk about some more stuff a little bit later. Bill?
Your comment seems to suggest that the Erickson formula is passé. After all, Erickson did build Riderwood and sold it at market prices for a tidy profit of a couple $100 million. That should be enough to entice for-profits into this industry. But the real question is, what does Leading Age believe is the effect of the Financial Accounting Standards Board deletion of the formula, which is permitting the non-for-profits to exist right now by postponing the refund until the successor entrance fee is received.
All I can tell you is that when I've talked to the CFOs, that I have not had anybody come back and say that that's an issue that they're losing any sleep about. I'm not qualified to respond much beyond that because I'm not a financial person.
Leading Age did not have a position on this?
We don't have a position on that, no.
It's pretty central to the viability of the whole industry. I mean, you must have something to say.
You know, all I can tell you is I've raised it with CFOs, and you and I've chatted, and I've talked to a number of CFOs, and we haven't had any of the members.
I've talked to two CFOs, one where I live and one which is the CFO where you're now sitting, and they both are very, they cannot defend the current situation, which the Financial Accounting Standards Board has deleted from their rules in a proposed exposure draft. It's not final yet, but it's certainly, the whole country has been responding to this, and the Leading Age apparently has not, which surprises me.
All I can tell you is that we respond when our members tell us that there's something of importance for us to respond to, and I've not received one phone call from a CFO on the accounting standards. If we get input from members that that's an issue that they'd like us to take a position on, that they think we can have some impact on, we're happy to do it. But we got lots of battles, so we don't usually go out looking for very many of them if we don't have member support.
Okay.
I'm confused on this IRS because in the state of Colorado, reimbursement for entrance fees is either when your apartment is rented or in 6 months. So it doesn't go on quite like Bill said, at least in Colorado.
And there are a few states that have time limits, but only a few. Most states don't have those in their state regulatory framework. That the other component is that's also a contract provision.
Right.
A lot of the older contracts have a when your apartment. Well, there's two old contract terms. One says you get your refund when that specific apartment is resold. There's even an older one that says you'll get your refund when any gets sold. Many contracts now, again, this to some extent responding to consumer demand, but this is not uniform. There are thousands of variations of contracts across the country. There are some contracts now that have time-specific refunds written into the contract, 6 months or a year. I think the year is becoming a little bit more common. And in point of fact, when I've talked to CFOs and talked to CCRC CEOs, the vast majority of them will tell you, at least as far as I can tell, and this is only going on what I know anecdotally, is that the vast majority of time the refunds are within 6 to 9 months. And so if you have a 1-year provision, that historically has not been a big problem. Now, the last 3 or 4 years, we've gone through a whole lot of stuff that has skewed that. I mean, it's gone from, I talked to one CEO specifically about this, that it used to be 2-3 months for us, and now it's 8, 9, 10 months. So, we've had a much slower return, but nevertheless, the refunds have been coming back within that year period. Now, I also have talked to a few CEOs where it has gone past a year. So, like everything else, there's outliers all over the park, and so I can't tell you with any certainty exactly what the average is, but that's part of the trend, and I think